Okay, so what if the very ideas you've been taught about earning money, building wealth, what if they were actually holding you back? Today, we're doing a deep dive into a really influential book, Robert T. Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Came out back in 1997, and it really shook things up in personal finance, a cornerstone, really.
It absolutely did. And this isn't just going to be a list of, financial tips. It's more about digging into a pretty profound mindset shift. Our mission here really is to pull out the core insights, maybe some surprising nuggets from our source material, which is a detailed chapter-by-chapter review of the book. The goal is to help you quickly, also thoroughly, grasp this foundational difference in thinking Kiyosaki talks about, between the rich, the poor, and the middle class.
Yeah, think of this as maybe your shortcut to understanding the book's main message, that real wealth. It comes from financial education, focusing strategically on getting assets, and importantly, cultivating an entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, let's unpack this. So Kiyosaki starts by introducing these two dads. His biological father, the poor dad, highly educated, government job, believed in the traditional path, school, stable job, that sort of thing. Then there's rich dad, his best friend's father. Less formal education, but huge financial intelligence. Advocated learning about money from, well, the real world.
hmm
What do you see as the really big difference between these two?
Well, what's fascinating, I think, is how these totally different mindsets shape Kiyosaki's whole view of money, right, from when he was a kid. It immediately frames the book's central point.
Mm.
It's not just how much money you make. It's really about how you think about it, how you manage it. It fundamentally challenges the definition of financial success most of us, kind of absorb growing up.
And that leads right into chapter 1. Provocative title. The rich don't work for money.
Kiyosaki tells this story, right? Him and his friend Mike working for Rich Dad, basically for free. But the lesson isn't just don't get a job, it's deeper. It's about rethinking the whole structure of your financial life. What do you think people find so, well, counterintuitive about that? Well, for a lot of people, the idea that the rich don't work for money, it just doesn't compute. We're basically conditioned to believe that a bigger salary equals more wealth. Simple as that. Kiyosaki just flips that completely. He argues the wealthiest people often aren't the ones with the highest paychecks. They're the ones who've figured out how to get their resources, their assets, to generate income for them independently. The poor and middle class, he says, they get stuck on this kind of hamster wheel, driven by fear, fear of not paying bills and desire for that next paycheck. While the rich, they're making money work for them. It's a huge flip in perspective. Can be pretty unsettling at first.
Right. So once you sort of start to get your head around that shift, the next question is, okay, why is financial literacy so important? And that's chapter 2. Why teach financial literacy? This is where he really nails down assets versus liabilities. For him, an asset isn't just something you own. It's something that actively puts money in your pocket, like income-generating investments, a business that runs itself, maybe rental properties.
Exactly. And conversely, a liability takes money out of your pocket. And it often includes things we mistakenly think are assets, like maybe your own house, if it's costing you more than it brings in, or personal cars, things that don't generate income.
So how do you measure wealth then? That's a key question he implies.
Yeah, because for Kiyosaki, real wealth is measured by time. How long could your assets support you if you stopped working today? That's the measure. The lesson is pretty clear. Build and acquire assets that generate income. That's the path to financial independence, not just accumulating liabilities, even if they look impressive.
Okay, so you grasp assets versus liabilities. Then chapter 3 pushes you further. Mind your own business. It's not just about saving money, is it? It's about actively building your own financial engine. But, for many people, the idea of growing something on the side while holding down a demanding job, that feels like a lot, maybe overwhelming. Does Kiyosaki suggest any practical first steps? How do you start building that asset column without just burning out?
Yeah, that's a fair point. The core message is definitely about growing something of your own alongside your job if you want real freedom. He does emphasize starting small. Maybe it's just a side venture, or gradually building a portfolio of investments that pay dividends or something. It's about being intentional, setting aside time, resources for your business, your assets, not just pouring everything into your employer's business.
Yeah.
So yeah, often that means looking at side hustles, smart investments, or maybe even creating intellectual property, something that generates passive income.
But then he throws another sort of curveball in chapter 4. He dives into something many people just gloss over, the history of taxes and the power of corporations. What did you find most striking about the way he explains the benefits here? Because it's not like shady tax evasion he's talking about.
No, not at all. It's about understanding the system. What's really eye-opening is how the tax system, which we often see as just this burden, was actually structured in ways that, if you understand and use them legally, give corporations a huge advantage over individual employees. Kiyosaki points out this fundamental difference. Employees earn money, then they get taxed, then they spend what's left over.
Right.
Corporations, though, they earn money, then they spend it on business expenses, and then they get taxed only on what profit remains.
Ah, okay.
The order matters.
Hugely. It's not about finding loopholes, not necessarily, but about a basic structural difference in how income is treated and taxed. A detail many employees just aren't aware of. And it fundamentally changes the wealth game. It's a perfect example of how financial education empowers you to legally protect and grow your money. Which kind of leads into Chapter 5. The rich invent money. Now, obviously, not literally printing it.
Haha, right, not counterfeiting.
It's about the rich actively creating opportunities rather than just waiting for them to appear. Kiyosaki points out that, investing, building businesses, spotting gaps in the market, it all takes a mix of education, sure, but also experience and, crucially, the courage to take calculated risks.
And that's where that great quote comes in. Great opportunities are not seen with your eyes, they are seen with your mind. It really underscores the importance of having that developed financial mindset, that financial intelligence, to actually recognize and then act on opportunities that other people might just walk right past. It's proactive versus reactive wealth creation.
Following that idea, Chapter 6 tells us, work to learn, don't work for money. Which sounds radical for many, choosing jobs not just for the paycheck, but for the skills you can acquire. He gives examples like taking a sales job to learn how to sell, or marketing roles to understand branding, maybe management to learn leadership. That really challenges the standard advice of always chase the highest salary, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It poses a really important question for you listening. Are you just chasing the next pay rise, or are you strategically building a skill set? Because the more diverse skills you pick up, things like selling, investing, basic accounting, good communication, leadership, the more opportunities you can not only see, but actually create for yourself. These skills, he argues, are the real foundation for lasting financial success, much more so than just a bigger paycheck in the short term.
Of course, changing your mindset, going after financial freedom, it's not easy. Kiyosaki tackles this directly in Chapter 7, Overcoming Obstacles. He points out 5 main barriers. Fear, like fear of losing money, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, like spending everything you earn, and arrogance, thinking you already know it all.
And if you connect this back to the bigger picture, it's really about mastering these internal barriers. They're often invisible, right? Recognizing and dealing with the fear of taking calculated risks, overcoming cynicism, whether it's from others or, your own internal voice, developing the discipline to beat laziness and common bad financial habits, and staying humble enough to keep learning. These are all absolutely essential steps. They aren't just financial challenges, they're psychological ones too.
Okay, so you've started to grasp the mindset, you've identified potential obstacles. Then what? Kiyosaki offers practical steps in Chapter 8, getting started, and reinforces them in Chapter 9. Still want more? Here are some to-dos. These chapters seem very action-oriented, right? What are some of the key strategies he pushes here?
Definitely all about action. He really emphasizes things like finding a reason that's bigger than your current reality, a strong why to keep you going. He advises making a conscious choice every day to be rich or at least work towards it. Mastering the power of learning quickly is another one. Actively seeking out and even hiring mentors. And crucially, this idea of always paying yourself first, before bills, before anything else. Set aside money for your assets.
Pay yourself first. That's a classic.
It is. He also mentions paying your advisors well, brokers, accountants, because good advice is valuable. And this interesting strategy he calls getting your investment back quickly. Basically, trying to recoup your initial capital from an investment relatively fast, so then you're essentially playing with house money, reducing your risk.
Makes sense.
Beyond that, it's about constantly looking for new ideas, taking classes, reading books, going to seminars, thinking bigger, taking those calculated risks we mentioned, and practicing financial self-discipline. So the journey to wealth, as he frames it, is really about continuous learning, acting on that learning, and then adjusting as you go.
So let's try to wrap this up. Summarizing the profound mindset shift we've talked about throughout this deep dive. Rich Dad, Poor Dad isn't really a technical finance manual full of spreadsheets and formulas. It's more of a powerful framework for just thinking fundamentally differently about money and wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. And to reemphasize those key takeaways, first, The vital role of acquiring real financial education, understanding how money actually works.
Yeah.
Second, the strategic importance of building assets, things that generate income, rather than just focusing solely on your salary. Third, developing that entrepreneurial way of thinking, seeing opportunities, and maybe most importantly, recognizing and pushing through those internal barriers, fear, doubt, cynicism, through constant learning and actually doing things,
Yeah.
taking action.
So hopefully you now have a powerful new lens, maybe, to view your own financial decisions and opportunities through. It's about potentially shifting your whole perspective, moving from just working for money to figuring out how to have your money work for you. It could redefine what financial freedom actually means for you.
And maybe a final thought to chew on, building on that quote we mentioned earlier. If great opportunities are truly seen, not with your eyes, but with your mind, what new perspectives, what unexpected opportunities might be waiting right there for you if you simply choose to look for them differently in your own life right now?